I was full-time freelance until '97. During that time, I'd had some contact with the Wall Street Journal. I'd been offered a job, in fact, by the Wall Street Journal in New York that we decided not to take because my wife was at the Banner and was doing very well there as the food writer for the Banner. And that came up at about 95, I guess. And so out of that relationship, I ended up doing freelancing for the Journal. And somewhere around that time, I think while I was trying to leave the paper, I sent a stack of clips to the New York Times. And lo and behold, a year after I left, June of 90, well, not quite a year, but maybe 7 months after I left, in June of 96, they, I had a call one day, and it was the New York Times saying they liked the look of my clips and would like me to string for them down here. So I did a lot of work with them. And both of those were great experiences because, you know, you're working with the very best. If I needed some kind of obscure piece of research done or research done in what were then very expensive news databases, like Dow Jones News Service, what's now Factiva, I could call, a librarian in New York, and she would have me the goods, in a matter of hours. The copy editors I worked with were excellent. The editors were first rate, and so those were great experiences. I ended up actually, I was in Atlanta the night the bombing happened at the Olympics in '96, and I ended up working for the Times at a hospital in the north of Atlanta, interviewing the sort of walking wounded who'd been triaged up there from 2 in the morning till 6 in the morning the night after that happened. So I had a lot of fun adventures with them. '97, after a teaching gig in Romania that lasted a few months, I came back and took over as editor and eventually publisher of Nashville Life magazine and Business Nashville magazine, which were owned by Eagle Communications. I became president of that company, and they were in a crisis when I joined up, and it was a turnaround situation, and I did my best to turn them around both editorially and on the business side. Did get Business Nashville turned around. We eventually had to shut down Nashville Life, and Business Nashville eventually sold out to Nashville Post. It became Nashville Post magazine, which is still published today. During that time, I covered the implosion of Columbia HCA, the federal raids on their hospital campuses and so forth in the spring of '97 that led to the firing of Rick Scott, their charismatic CEO, who's now governor of Florida. And let's see. I guess after that, I went to spent a year with a language learning, a language education company. So basically out of daily journalism for a little while, and I spent another year on a book with John Edgerton called Nashville: An American Self-Portrait. And that was, in a sense, a journalism gig. It was, we got venture funding and went out and rounded up about 40 different authors and a huge number of photographers to try to chronicle the city in 1 year. And the year we chose turned out pretty good because it was 2000. It began with Titans in the Super Bowl, and it ended with Bush v. Gore. So I'm still pretty happy with the way that book came out, and a lot of prominent journalists were involved with it. some from out of town who had been here back in the 60s and so forth, like David Halverson, were involved. Roy Blunt Jr. and Lamar Alexander, a number of people. That project, my partner on that was John Edgerton, who you probably will want to talk to if you can. He's sort of the dean of Nashville journalists, I'd say. He's been more of an author than a journalist over the years, but he has done a lot of local journalism. And that's spelled Egerton. My family and I moved to England in 2001 to do some academic work, and came back at the very end of 2003. And I freelanced for a while. And in 2000, I was close friends with the guys who had founded Nashville Post. It was David A. Fox, and Bill Carey. We had been on the business desk together at the Tennessean. David had been a few years ahead of me at MBA, and was in my brother's class there. And Bill and I were at Vanderbilt together, so we went way back. The venture capitalist who helped launch Nashville Post in 2000, at the end of '99, really, was Townes Duncan, who also backed, at about the same time, was backing our book about Nashville. And so I was unofficially involved in the launch of the Post. I was around and took part in some meetings and things like that as they were trying to figure out what to do, how best to get it off the ground, whether they needed a print component to it or not. It was right at the moment, really, of the .com bust that they actually launched, and so they put a lot of energy into trying to get much better business reporting product out there than the Tennessean, and they beat them pretty badly, regularly. And so I followed that from abroad and so on. And in 2005, the Post had a crisis of sorts, a split between the guy who was running their magazine and David Fox, who was running the online product. Even though he was one of the founders, Bill Carey had already left, and the magazine guy, basically, David decided to quit. And so they ceased publication in the online product, NashvillePost.com, ceased publication in August of 2005. And then there was a great groundswell of people contacting Townes and, in the business community saying, how can you let this happen? We really love this thing, and we'll subscribe if you'll bring it back. So he got David Fox, who had gone on to a hedge fund, his brother's hedge fund firm, but just working on the side. Townes got David to round up a new team to relaunch Nashville Post in December, officially, I guess, December of 2005. And that was Richard Lawson, who had just broken the news he was a Tennessean business reporter who had just broken news that Nissan's headquarters was coming to Nashville. So he was riding a big scoop, but was very unhappy at the Tennessean, so he came. Ken Whitehouse, who had been a political operative, Democratic political operative, worked with Al Gore and Ned McWhorter down through the years. He became our political reporter, and I took on a lot of different roles there in terms of editing the copy and and writing stories. So we set to work in December of 2005 and remade the Post, had to redo its technical, its website and its content management system and everything from scratch, really. We were not making money, but we were getting better. The numbers were continually going in the right direction, so towns kept funding it. And here I'm fuzzy on the dates. I believe it was late '07 when Towns decided to consolidate his various media properties. By that point, he had invested in Music Row magazine and I forget what else, but he brought in Chris Farrell, former councilman. Chris was a councilman at large at age 25, the youngest in Nashville history. And Chris became CEO of a company now to be called Southcom. And as time went by in the next couple of years, Southcom bought, I'm trying to remember the sequence of events, but soon it bought the city paper, which had been founded in 2000 by a guy named Brian Brown. He had lost a lot of money on it. The family, the Thompson family of Thompson Machinery had bought it from him, and they were losing a lot of money on it. And so Southcom bought it, turned it from daily to weekly publication, and began to reshape it into the form it has today. Then, some months after that, the Nashville scene came on the market. The scene, Bruce Doby and Ali Del Favreau had sold. They had bought out their investors in the scene during the 90s, and then sold the paper to Village Voice Media. Village Voice Media had managed to destroy a lot of the value of the scene. They were almost as bad a chain as Gannett, and they got into a situation where they were desperate to sell it. So my understanding is that Southcom got it for a pretty good price. And so now we had the scene, the city paper, and Nashville Post, and Music Row, and a few other media properties, all under Southcom. I played various roles at Southcom in the next few years.